Most explanations of the term anti-white that I've heard are technical and logical. I should know, I'm trained in mathematics and science, and therefore I have a huge respect for rigor. So it's ironic that I think such explanations are superfluous. I think the meaning of anti-white is fairly intuitive. But for the record, the best way to explain anti-white, in my opinion, is that it's a sentiment, an ethos, an unspoken premise upon which we're all made to live our lives. And if that unspoken premise were ever spoken aloud, bluntly, and from the gut, it would sound something like this. White people shouldn't have their own countries. White people shouldn't have their own cities or neighborhoods either. White people shouldn't even have their own schools or churches. A company's workforce can't be all white, regardless of whether they're doing good business, and regardless of whether the whites prefer working with each other. White people shouldn't have their own private scholarship funds. That goes without saying, since everyone knows there are too many whites in the universities already. A movie can't be released if it has an all-white cast, or even if it's mostly white. And all movies had better have the mandatory lesson against racism. What, do you think you're just going to have a movie that entertains with no social message? Same with books, magazines, newspapers, and any other form of media. They can't include too many whites, either as authors or as characters. And they'd all better be fighting racism. Speaking of race, white people aren't a race. What does white mean anyway? Don't capitalize the word white the way we do for all the other races. And don't call them anything respectful the way we do for all the other races, like when we say people of color or African American community. No exalted labels or titles for whites. They have no color, they're not a people or a community, and there's nothing about them worth celebrating or preserving. Because white people don't deserve what they have. They took it from the other races. This goes for all whites. No matter how young they are, no matter what their ancestors did or refrained from doing, and there's no grievance, real or imagined, that's too far in the past for the grievance miners to dig up and weaponize. White guilt is perfectly acceptable. And all white people are guilty. Everywhere, all the time, and for all time. So we don't have to mention their sufferings, because other races are always suffering more. Don't mention their health problems, or suicide rates, or unemployment rates, or interracial crime stats, which show a staggeringly disproportionate effect on whites. Don't highlight whites in any way. We don't celebrate white history, we celebrate American history. And don't you dare think that only whites can be American. So what if we have Black History Month, and Hispanic Heritage Month, and Jewish American Heritage Month? The rules only apply to white people. Magnify their shortcomings, and chalk their achievements up to privilege. Always compare whites unfavorably in relation to the other races. Whites are only important to the extent that they're helping other races. They have no right to live for themselves. How dare white people only marry and reproduce with themselves? How dare white people do anything without inclusion of all other peoples? Whites should voluntarily hold themselves back so that other races can succeed. Less white means more diverse. No white means most diverse. And diversity is more important than anything. Anyone living under this worldview, this narrative, spoken or unspoken, knows the meaning of the term anti-white.